So good afternoon or good morning, everyone, depending on where you're at right now. The Tech Talks are becoming more international each day, so that's also the reason why we had to move today's Tech Talk to 1 p.m. because our guest speaker today is at the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. So we had to make this small change, and I'm glad that we still have an audience that could make it today. So as always, please take note that this session will be recorded. My name is Maria, and I will be moderating this Tech Talk as I usually do. Well, the past Tech Talks have been moderated by my colleague Jan, but usually it's me. So let's just get on with it. You will find the Tech Talk afterwards on YouTube in a couple of days when we're finished with editing and so on. So let's just start with what we have planned for today. So as I was mentioning, we have a guest from Incus today. So he's maintainer of the Incus project, and we asked him if he could tell us a little bit more about his project, and he agreed to join. So Stéphane Graber, and we are very happy that you're here today with us and presenting your project. So just a brief introduction on Stéphane. He's a self-employed engineer at Sapli, and he's, as I said before, one of the maintainers of the Incus project. He has a lot of experience with open source projects, over 20 years, and worked 12 years at Canonical with Ubuntu, and then leading some of the container projects like LXC and LXT. And he's also a frequent speaker and contributor to conferences, and also involved in organizing the NorthSec conference, which I think is one of the largest ones in security. So as I said before, we're very happy that you're here today. It's great to have you here, and we're looking forward to learning a little bit more about the Incus project. So I'll stop my screen sharing and hand it over to you whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you. And yeah, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Let me see. Just picking the right screen here. Just always take a while. This guy. Yeah, here we go. So sharing, and we should be good. Actually, let me just move that window somewhere else. All right. All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for the intro. So as mentioned, I'm Stéphane Graber. I'm the project leader for Linux containers, one of the Incus maintainers, and also the former project leader of LXD back at Canonical. So today we're going to be talking about Incus and try to go pretty quickly through things, so I'd still get to put some demo and everything within the time of this tech talk. So what's Incus? Incus is effectively a modern private cloud platform. It's multi-tenant and supports running system containers. So that's a full Linux distribution inside of a container, virtual machines, and we've also added support for OCI application containers, so more like your normal Docker containers. It's all built around a pretty simple yet powerful REST API. It's got a CLI and some web UI options to interact with it. Here we're seeing like a basic example of the CLI. And it's got great support for limiting and controlling resource allocations and for doing things like device pass-through. So here we've got an example of what one of the web interfaces look like. And also, Incus can run on basically anything. With it, can basically run on a potato. So you can run it on like a small ARM board, a small RISC-V board, no problem, all the way up to clusters of hundreds of very powerful servers. Incus got very comprehensive support for storage and networking, so you can do effectively either software-defined or traditional physical storage or networking with it. Just like most cloud tooling, it's got good integration with some of the standard tools in the ecosystem, so things like Packer, Ansible, Terraform, or OpenTofu these days. On the observability side of things, it integrates with the Grafana stack. So we've got a Grafana dashboard, Prometheus for metrics, Loki for logging, that's all directly supported by Incus. Access control to Incus is usually done either through TLS client certificates over the HTTPS API, or it can be done centrally with OpenID Connect and OpenFGA. And we support kind of the standard things as far as what you would do with your cloud instances effectively. So you can do snapshots, backups, attached devices, shared volumes, all that kind of stuff. All right. Just a bit of history. I'm going to go too long on that. It used to be more relevant all the way at the beginning of the project, but we're like a year and a bit in at this point. So this is becoming less useful information. But to just give a bit of a history of how we ended up here, the LXC project itself was created all the way back in 2008 by Daniel Lascano, then just before he joined IBM. Then things kind of evolved over a number of years, but the Linux containers project itself, so kind of the umbrella project that we have now, got created in 2013. And it's also when we started publishing our own distribution images and that kind of stuff. The LXD project was created a year after that as a way to try and simplify the LXC experience, make it more approachable to new users. And that's kind of how things were for a while. We were doing yearly LTS, every 2 years LTS releases, every month normal releases of the LXD project. And that lasted mostly like for almost a decade until last year when things kind of took a turn. So I effectively announced that I was going to be leaving Canonical. And when that happened, a lot of the things we had put in place as far as the community kind of all unraveled pretty rapidly. Canonical announced that the LXD project was going to be taken over from the open source community project Linux containers and be moved to Canonical itself. Also went through a rebranding at a time. Then they removed privileges from anyone who was not a Canonical employee. Even shortly before I fully left the company. Then after I left, the community was obviously not thrilled with effectively not really being able to contribute to the project, not really being able to interact in the way they used to. So Alexa Sarai of SUSE went on and forked LXD as a new project called Incus. I then got kind of involved with that, did some work on it, and the other maintainers of the Linux containers project decided that like, hey, we used to have that LXD project, we used to have a bunch of resources, lab environment, all that stuff to run it. Now Canonical took it over, so how about we just take Incus and replace LXD with it effectively? So that's what happened. Then Incus 0.1 was released in October last year. After that, we've been doing monthly releases ever since. Towards the end of the year, Canonical did one more change to LXD that made things even a bit worse for everyone else, which is requiring every contributor to sign a legal agreement before they can contribute to it, and also relicensed it from the Apache 2 license to AGPL v3. So that really impacted the ability to contribute to LXD itself. Anyways, back on our side, as I said, we're doing monthly releases. In April, we released our first long-term support release in sync with the other projects that Linux Containers manages. And that's kind of where we are. We've got an LTS at this point that's used by a lot of production users. We've got monthly, more featureful new releases for users that use it maybe on their laptops or in their home labs. And that's kind of what we've been doing. Now, kind of back onto what Incus can do, what can you actually run on there? So there are a few different things. On the system container front, we run pretty much every single distro you can think of. So that would be the combination of both containers and VMs in that combination. Then application containers is pretty new to us, but that effectively lets you run any OCI compatible image. So that means Docker Hub, that means GitHub, container registry, etc. Like anything that's on those registries, you can also run natively on Incus. And then with virtual machines, we've got pre-made images for a number of the distros, mostly the most common ones. And then you can still run whatever else you want by installing from an ISO image or the like. So you can install the BSDs, you can install Windows, like effectively anything you want. For the images that we do produce, we've actually produced them daily, and we produce them on both Intel and ARM. So that's why I was saying you can run Incus on a Raspberry Pi if you feel like it. That's perfectly fine. You can even run virtual machines on a Raspberry Pi if it's got enough memory. All right, let's switch to a quick demo of just showing like a standalone Incus and kind of how that works real quick. So if I go here to a local terminal, I've got a empty Incus right now. If I just want to create a system container, we can say, hey, go and grab the Grand Arch Linux full distro image and start that. Okay, that. And then maybe if we want Ubuntu, we can do Ubuntu. And this one, we can do it as a VM. So that's just unpacking our VM image here. All right. And what can we do after that? Actually, let me just remove it in case if it's already there. No, it's not. Good. Okay, so for the container, the application container, for application containers, because there are so many registries, you need to actually define them. So if you want to access the Docker Hub, you need to actually add it. And at which point I should be able to do Docker and say the nginx image from Docker Hub. Okay, and here we go. So at this point, if we look at it, we've got 3 instances running. We've got Arch, which is a container. We've got nginx, which is an application container. And we've got Ubuntu, that's a VM. And for all of them, if we want to go in there, we can execute a bash shell. So that's running inside of the Arch container. We can go look at what's going on in nginx. Here we go. It doesn't have PS installed, so that's slightly unfortunate. But yeah, you could go and poke around the file system, it's fine. And for the Ubuntu VM, the exact same works too. We effectively have an agent in our VMs that lets us have them behave mostly like containers. So we can easily execute commands inside of them without needing SSH or anything like that. Okay, so that's your standalone Incus. We just have those 3 instances running. And let's go back to slides. All right. So how do you kind of drive this thing? Like I showed the CLI, I'm going to be showing the web UI as well shortly. But you like it's effectively a private cloud, so you can also use all of the cloud tooling. So that means indeed using Terraform, OpenTofu. We've got our own provider for those. On the Ansible side, we've got a connection plugin that lets you directly talk to Incus instead of having to use SSH or something like that. And if you want to produce your own kind of modified images, you can use Packer with the Incus plugin to pull one of the pristine operating system images that we publish and then do your changes and turn that into an Incus image, much the same way you would with cloud images. On the observability front, we effectively expose an open metrics endpoint and we support low-key. So that usually means most folks will use Prometheus to get the metrics into their database. And on the low-key side, well, they just effectively let us send logging data. The logging data actually includes more than just pure logs. We've got kind of 3 classes of events. We've got the log events themselves. We've got what we call lifecycle. So it's effectively your audit trail of who did what, but like in a more structured way than log messages. Oops. And we have, if you're using the software-defined network solution, so Oven, you can actually have firewall rule hits also go to log if you want to. So you can put a firewall rule on a network saying, if this port is being accessed, I would like it to be logged. And then that logged entry goes to log. All right. And yeah, Grafana as a dashboard is kind of the most common. We've got one published that people can easily pull as an example. Cool. Second demo time. So just going to go look at a cluster instead. And this time, instead of doing the CLI, I figured I would do it with the most common web UI that people use. So that's what you see here. So I've got a cluster. This one uses like a proper valid certificate and everything. I'm logged in, so it's using the centralized authentication with OpenID Connect. So you can see that I'm logged in here. I can go look at the cluster itself. So we can see it's made of 4 machines here. It's currently running a number of instances, so mix mostly VMs, some containers in there. If you take a VM, say that Windows 22 one, you can go look at more details directly through there. You could create snapshots and the like, but you can also directly access the graphical console. So in this case, directly accessing the Windows desktop. Particularly useful when you're dealing with Windows, slightly less useful when you're dealing with Linux, but yeah. On the Linux side, if I were to take like one of the Red Hat examples we have here, on top of being able to do the same thing and get the VGA console if we wanted, we can also access the text console, which can be useful because this is actually text mode you can copy paste and it gets you sometimes more details. And you can, if you ask for a terminal, then that communicates. Obviously, I'm using the one that doesn't have the agent running. Let's do Ubuntu instead. That should work. Yeah, there we go. So if the agent is running inside the VM, then you can also get a terminal directly. So that's the equivalent of the Incus exec I was showing earlier. And it being a cluster with VMs, we can even do things like live migration. So that VM, that Ubuntu VM, is currently running on server 3. We could go here and just be like, okay, I want it to run on server 1 now, please. And that's just going to perform a live migration for us. Just takes a few seconds. And if we look, there we go, it's on server 1. And just to confirm, it actually did a live migration. If we go back, get a terminal in it, it's been up for 8 hours, so it didn't restart or anything. All right. And just go back here. So that was just a quick look and through the web UI and looking at the cluster. Obviously, the same can be done with the CLI. I just figured I would do one demo with the CLI, one demo with the web UI. Where can you get Incus? So we're packaged on pretty much all of the common Linux distros. We've got good instructions on how to install it on all of those. There's even a Docker image that includes Incus, which is a bit weird, kind of hurts your brain to think about it, but it's technically possible to just install Incus as a Docker container and then have it run more containers and VMs, which is a bit weird, but it works. On the client side, you can use the web interface as I showed, so that's going to work everywhere. But the command line tool also works on Linux, macOS, and Windows, so you can run that anywhere you want it. And that's basically it. So we do have an online demo that you can go to that lets you play with both the web UI and the CLI through like a temporary VM that we set up for you. Very easy if you want to just get started, look at it before you install it anywhere. And I think that's basically the end of my 20 minutes. So that was just a quick look at what Incus is and kind of what it can do very briefly. Obviously, there's a lot more on our website. There's also documentation where you can go look at all of the different aspects of it. And yeah, I would encourage you to try the online demo because that's very easy. It's got a bit of a tutorial type thing that lets you go from one step to the next. I can actually briefly show you what that looks like. So if we go on the, so just do Incus, oops, try it. Okay, so that's what it looks like. You just accept the terms and conditions to start, and you immediately get into an environment where you can interact with Incus. Or if you in a tutorial at the top that kind of gets you through various steps, or you can try the web interface by clicking the link, and you end up in like a temporary web interface as well. You effectively have 30 minutes to play with it, and then that gets all cleaned up. All right. So that's it for the intro to Incus. Hopefully it was useful to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the presentation. Now we have some time for questions and discussions. So as always, there are several options. You have a question, you can just paste it on the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and ask the question, or raise your hand, and we will give you the microphone.
Don't be shy.
Yeah, we already have a couple of questions. I think Jan was first.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yep.
A little bit. Yeah,
okay, now it's better. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Stefan, for your nice presentation. I have a question about the supporting operating systems. Is there a plan for supporting SUSE Linux? I didn't saw that on your slide, so maybe it's just okay.
So it's actually, it should be fixed shortly. So it's really ironic because Alexa Sarah, who created Incus, works for SUSE. And so used to package LXD and obviously was looking at packaging Incus as well. There were some issues with dependencies and stuff that took a while to sort out, but as of earlier this week, it's made good progress, and so we're expecting a native SUSE package to be added to that within the next few weeks.
Okay, thank you. And another question, which advantage in comparison to other solutions like Proxmox did I get with this solution? Or
yeah, it's very similar in features compared to Proxmox, also because we both use LXC and we've been working with the Proxmox guys for a long time as well. I think at this point, the main difference, I don't think Proxmox has a native support for application containers. I think you still need to kind of run those nested. But otherwise, the biggest difference I think at this point is kind of the general structure and feel. Incus is a lot more cloudy. It behaves a lot more like you would expect from dealing with Google Compute, AWS, etc. Like it acts and uses terminology that's a lot closer to the public clouds. Whereas Proxmox is a lot closer to what VMware used to be as far as design. But like feature-wise, the two are pretty close for sure.
okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay. Then the other question, T. Bigger.
Hi, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Turns is the first name. I'm following the LXC and LXD and Incus project. I'm a member on the mailing list as well. And I just wanted to, but I have a little bit lost the connection, and that's why I like the idea of getting up to date today. What I wanted to know is the live migration. Do you need shared storage for that, or is this going without shared storage?
You don't need to. It works a lot faster if you have it.
Oh, okay.
So if you have shared storage, then it's effectively you just need the memory to move. That's very quick. If you don't, then we will do the multi-stage background storage migration. So the downtime will be effectively the same, even if you don't have shared storage. But if you don't have shared storage, we need to first transfer all of the data and keep track of the differences, and then do multi-stage of that data and move it.
Okay. And I've read a little bit in your documentation, and obviously this is only possible in a cluster setup, right?
The live migration, technically not. You can live migrate between multiple standalone servers. The problem you're going to have is that you're going to want to make sure that they all have the exact same profiles, the exact same devices, the exact same network, so that you can actually live migrate in a meaningful way. Incus won't really stop you. You could move from a standalone machine with one network to another standalone machine with a different network, and it will let you live migrate, but obviously not going to work very well.
And the other thing, I first learned about this distributed database, and this is needed for a cluster, right?
Yes, I mean, it's not something you have to care about because it's always built into Incus. So we do use, it used to be called DQLite back in the LXD days. That project also got forked with Incus. So it's now called CarSQL. Oh. And it's our built-in database, which is effectively a distributed version of SQLite. And it's you don't see it because even when you run standalone, we're already on CarSQL, just not clustered yet. And then as you join to have a fully HA cluster, which needs 3 machines, then we just add more machines to that database. You never need to really configure it yourself. You don't need to set up any kind of shared database server or anything. When you go and cluster, it just transparently happens for you.
And is there a maximum number of nodes you would support in a setup?
So we usually recommend not really going past 50. We test with 150 and we're usually fine. But at those kind of scales, it's usually best to run like 3 clusters and have like 3 availability zones effectively than one huge cluster. because you do need to perform some amount of maintenance on a cluster. Like occasionally you will want to move to a new major version of Incus. And when you do that, you're going to need to update all of those servers at the same time, which takes down the API for some amount of time. It won't impact the running instances, but the API will go down for a little while. So for larger environments, it tends to be less risky to actually have a number of clusters than just one huge one.
Thank you.
Any other questions? There's, by the way, a comment in the chat saying that the web demo interface is working really nice. So I guess that's another reason to try it out for the rest of you.
The online demo is pretty popular, and it works really well. And it's also a good test for us because it obviously runs on Incus itself. So like every time someone joins the demo, it's just a Incus VM that's created on our side that lasts effectively 30 minutes and can do nested containers, nested VMs. So that's pretty good. I think we usually have like an average of maybe 10 to 15 people connected to this thing at any one time testing it. So it's been very useful because all you need is a web browser. You can test that even if like a very restricted work environment or whatever. You can still go and test it. You don't need to find spare hardware or ask for permission to install something somewhere to test it or anything. So it's been a very useful tool.
Yeah, this is very popular. Then maybe a question from my side. Do you have any plans on the roadmap for Incus that you would want to share? You've mentioned some of them already for the next weeks and so on, but is there anything large on your roadmap?
I mean, the large thing we had this year was the addition of application containers. So kind of getting into running Docker images and that kind of stuff. So that was kind of the big one, but we did it, and we've done most of the fixing that was kind of related to that. There is some amount of other work we've been doing on like mostly the clustering side. So as we've showed, we obviously have live migration. We've got disaster recovery too, where we can configure the cluster for like after 1 minute of a machine being down, all of the instances that were running on it automatically restart on others, so long as you've got shared storage, shared networking. So we've got that feature, but the next step for us is to also do automatic rebalancing. So looking at the resources available in the cluster, and so automatically live migrating the VMs to better use the available space. So we've got that on the roadmap. Funny that someone should ask in the chat. Yeah, the VMware migration is definitely on our mind as well. That's like everything that happened with VMware and Broadcom recently has definitely sent a lot of people looking for alternatives, and Incus is a pretty good fit for a lot of that. We do have a migration tool that can do kind of the basics. It can take like a VMDK and import that into Incus, but it doesn't do some of the needed steps like injecting drivers, tweaking some of the config and that kind of stuff. So we actually are working on that. I'm also the CTO of a newly announced company, actually announced like 2 days ago, I think, which looks specifically at large-scale customers moving to Incus. So we're looking at very large former VMware customers mostly, so Fortune 500, those kind of guys, who are moving in the tens to hundreds of thousands of virtual machines from VMware to Incus. And part of that is we are working on a tool called when the company is called Future Fusion, but it's the Future Fusion Migration Center, Migration Manager actually, that handles that. And all of those tools will be open source Apache too. So that's why I'm mentioning them here too. It's like it's not like that tool will become available in the next few months for people who need to migrate a bunch of VMs to Incus clusters. We will most likely also extract some amount of logic from that tool and put that back into our smaller standalone Incus migrate tool, so that if you're just moving a few VMs, you can just use that tool. You probably won't get some of the fanciness of the larger tool we're building, but you probably don't, like for a small scale lab environment or something like that, you probably don't need to track tens of thousands of VMs, ownership, sign off, all that kind of stuff. Doesn't really make sense if it's just your lab. But yeah, it's obviously something that's on our mind, something we've been looking at. Lots of disgruntled VMware users right now looking for alternatives.
There is a question also from Gökhan. I think he raised his hand a while ago.
Yes. So there are no stupid questions, right? So no, no. I saw in your demo you also used the web UI, right? And when I Googled for it, I saw that it's a separate package.
Yep.
Which is not integrated yet. Is it also because of the split from canonical, as the name implies?
Yes. So exactly. Canonical makes a UI for LexD that they call LexD UI. The UI I showed is called Incus UI. It's just a rebranded version of it, plus 20 or so small patches and changes we made to it. We don't currently have an official UI. So that's why I think I mentioned that this is like a web UI, because there are technically a bunch of others you can find on GitHub that have been developed by a bunch of different people. And the way it works with Incus is that we've got like a folder on disk that you put your web UI in, and Incus just serves that. It's not deeply integrated with any particular web UI. So this is the UI that I like to show because I think it's the most feature complete and kind of nice looking. But you can very easily swap that for any others. And that's why the package is called Incus UI Canonical. It's because if there was interest from anyone else who's been developing their web UI, we could easily package them and have them as an alternative that people can install.
Okay, thank you.
And there's another question in the chat.
Just saw it. Yeah. So the question is around, is this like the silver bullet you can use for everything, or are there cases where you should look at something like OpenStack instead? And it kind of depends. So if you want to run your own public cloud, probably look at OpenStack at this stage. It's better suited for that. It's been used by a number of companies to run their public cloud platform. So I mean, like OVH and a bunch of others are effectively using OpenStack for that. And OpenStack does a decent job for that. But OpenStack is quite a bit more complex. There's a lot more moving pieces, a lot more services going on. And in general, the operation and kind of maintenance updates type tasks on OpenStack can be pretty painful. So it's the kind of thing where like Incus will work great in an environment, like in pretty low touch environment where you just want things to work. You want it to be able to update it, but you don't need, like you don't have a dedicated team that's just looking at it every single day. Whereas if you're running OpenStack, you probably need dedicated people to just manage it. It's like keep an eye on everything, update things, look at tweaking configuration. Like OpenStack is quite a bit more of a beast in that regard. I guess the other aspect of OpenStack is it doesn't have a distributed control plane like Incus does. So you need to effectively have dedicated machines to run the control plane, which means if you just have like 3 servers that you want to run a cluster on, it's not really feasible with OpenStack. Whereas with Incus, if you've got 3 machines, you've got yourself a fully highly available environment. So there's another question in there on networking. So networking for VM and effectively container for us is the same. How's that done? So different ways. We support basically everything you can think of, but you can do physical networking or software networking. If you do software networking, it uses Oven. You can create all virtual distributed networks and distributed routers and all that kind of stuff. If you're looking at the physical side of it, then yeah, we can connect either to just a local managed bridge, so something that Incus itself creates, it runs its own DHCP and runs its own thing, or you can attach to your physical network. And attaching to your physical network, you can do it in a number of ways. You can attach, as you mentioned, just to a physical VLAN on your network, works fine. But you can also use hardware accelerated paths. So if you've got network cards that support things like SRIOV, then you can use them, and you can even do VLANs on top of SRIOV if you want to. So there are a lot of options there that range from, not having Incus be involved at all and just putting you directly on a dedicated NIC or dedicated VLAN, and that's it, all the way to a fully software-defined solution. And I think it's just a comment. And yeah, the comment is quite right. Like, that it's, I think one of the strong points of Incus at this point is the ability, as I showed in the demo briefly, to run container, VM, application containers all on the same platform. Because it also means that you only need to define your storage once, you need to define your networking once, and you need to think about high availability once. And you can also, I mean, they don't really have too much time for demo, but you can also do a bunch of shared config and shared devices between those. You can very easily create a storage volume and then attach it at the same time to your application container, your system container, and your virtual machine. And they will all see the same data, and you can do that very easily. And same thing with resource limits. You can create what we call a configuration profile. And in that profile, you can set, hey, anything that's got this profile applied gets 2 CPUs, 2 gigs of RAM, 10 gigs of disk. And then you can use that same profile for containers and virtual machines, and they will all get the same kind of resource limits. So having everything kind of together really makes that a lot easier to deal with, for sure.
Okay. I see no more questions in the chat. Are there any other questions somewhere else in your minds? One, two, three. No, doesn't seem to be the case. So, oh, yeah, another one. Yeah.
Last minute one.
Yeah, last minute. Yeah.
So,
go on, Georg.
Can you hear me?
Okay. So there's two. Okay. Okay, then.
No, I think it's possibly the same person,
yeah,
but connected twice.
Yeah, sorry.
So, first of all, thank you for the nice presentation. So which hypervisor technology is being used by Incus, and how hard would it be to add support for another hypervisor?
So we're using QEMU KVM like basically everyone else. It shouldn't be too difficult to add a different hypervisor. Like we've got an abstraction layer already around that in Incus technically. We would need a very good reason to add the complexity of dealing with another hypervisor. That's the main thing. Like as far as testing, validation, and everything, that's where the biggest cost would be. But the code is structured in a way where we can pretty easily add more options, which is why, like on the container side, our runtime is LXC, but then we've added the LXC OCI part with very limited code changes earlier this year. And yeah, the QEMU VM driver is not particularly small because it needs to do a lot of things, including interactions with the agent and all that kind of stuff. But it's not impossible either to add another one.
Okay, thank you so much, Stéphane.
Okay. Oh, another one.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, you showed the logos of the various distributions. Are you providing the images for these? Or is the Incus project doing?
Yeah, exactly. So we've got, if I switch to here, there we go. So we've got our image server, and we build, for all of those, we build them daily. So we see like Alma Linux, Alpine, Alt, like most Linux distributions, we build images daily. The more popular ones tend to get both container and VM images. The slightly less popular ones tend to just get container images. But yeah, we build all of those daily. So we've got our own tooling for that called Distro Builder, and we've been building those images for probably close to a decade at this point. So we're getting pretty good at the process of building those images. They get tested automatically before they get published. So we've got some amount of confidence that they at least boot, network works, and they generally function pretty well.
Very nice.
Okay, last chance for questions. Okay, Stéphane, so thank you very much for your presentation and for answering all the questions. And before we close off today's session, I would like to take 2 or 3 minutes just to share some of the news of the Alaska Association with the rest of you. And as always, you're also welcome to share any news or any interesting events, anything that you've heard of that you think might be interesting for the community. So if I may, I will just share my slides again. Thanks. So the first great news that we have, I mean, this is nothing new. You've heard of this before probably, but we are hosting the Alaska Summit next week in Dresden. Tuesday and Wednesday. So we're super excited. It's for us the first large event that we organize at this scale. So it's fully booked. Well, actually, it's not fully booked. The last time I checked, there's one ticket left. Stefan, I would hand it over to you as, as a way to say thank you. You make it on time to Germany for next week. But well, almost fully booked. So yeah, we're really happy about that. We have a program full of presentations and workshops related to open source cloud technologies, some related to Alaska, but also other projects and other technologies. So we're really looking forward to that, and I hope that I will see some of you there next week. Then another interesting thing that has been happening in Alaska is that we have a new technical steering committee. Actually, I think that a couple of the members of the technical steering committee are online. So if you want to unmute yourself and say something about your role, you're welcome. So actually, when Alaska started about two years ago, we didn't have a technical steering committee, and this role was taken over by the board of the association. And now we had a real election, and now we've selected 5 members, and they will be in charge of overseeing the overall roadmap for the Alaska projects, not of each of the individual projects, but of the overall roadmap of the association, and taking care of the alignment of those projects and so on, and also evaluating new projects that want to be hosted by the Alaska Association. So we have Christian from 23 Technologies, Marcel from Disco, Matthias from Uhuru Tech, Martin from Cyberus Technology, and Josefina, who's also vice chair of the Alaska Association. So I don't know if anyone wants to say something, add something on this, feel free. Otherwise, we will keep you updated on social media and on our website when there's something new. And yeah, we're really looking forward to this new Terrican Steering Committee and the role that they will have in the association. We think it's a really important step for Alaska. Then we have 2 new members in the association too. If you've joined the last Tech-Talks or you've taken a look at our LinkedIn, you've seen that in the past months we've had a steadily growing number of members. And now we have 2 more members, B1 Systems. They are experts in Linux and open source consulting, training, and offering different services and support. And we also have Horizon. They are focused on providing sustainable cloud computing solutions and green IT. So these are our 2 new members for the month, and we're really happy. Each member that joins Alaska brings their own knowledge, their own view of how to achieve digital sovereignty in a positive way for all. So it's always great to have new members on board. And then finally, we have a new community digest coming out on Monday. So there you will be able to see some of the news of the association of the past 3 months. So that will be published on Monday. So take a look at our website, and we will also post it on social media. Otherwise, does anyone else want to add anything? Any news? Anything you want to share? Then just a brief reminder to stay tuned. You can subscribe to a mailing list. You can watch past Tech-Talk videos on YouTube, and you can also access the upcoming Tech-Talks on their website and download the calendar files to make sure that you have them on your calendars and don't miss the next Tech-Talks that we have. Actually, the next one will be at on November 29th. Again, we're switching back to 11 a.m. as usual. And this time we have a presentation on quantifying digital sovereignty, which will be held by Disco, which is one of the most recent members of the Alaska Association. So Anastasia and Marcel will be sharing with us their view on how digital sovereignty can be quantified to make it more transparent and not just sort of term that's void of meaning and where no one knows what it exactly means. So that would be also the last tech talk of the year. We are having a Christmas break in December, so there will be no talk in December, and we will be back again in January. But do join us for the next tech talk at the end of November. Otherwise, I'm finished with this. I thank again, Stéphane. Thank you very much for being here. It was great to have you here. Thank you for waking up so early to be here with us. And thank you also to the rest of the audience for being here and for your questions and for participating in the discussion. Then I wish you all a nice weekend and hope to see you all back again at the end of November.